We're live.
Hey, we are live. It is the Sunday Live. It is the Sunday Nightmare. Welcome to it. It's the Average Joe Sports Show. Find and like and subscribe the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube, Twitter, AJ Sports Radio. And that's Bill Doleman. That's Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Hope you're doing all right. It has been a wild morning here at the old Schmidt household. So we are 5 minutes late. You get that cleaned up, Junior? Yeah. Gertie's been on medicine, the German, and let's just say the medicine won this morning. And that's what we've been doing. So apologies about the tardy. Billy D, how was gymnastics last night? How was your evening, Elijah? We'll get into ball here in just moments, I promise. And thanks for joining us on the stream, as always, with the Average Joe Sports Show. We'll get our shout-outs here in a moment. Well,
it is a Average Joe Sports Show World Takeover. Great start yesterday on Saturday. And look, we're 7 days a week. Okay, that's just the bottom line. Unlike anything going on today. Talk Huskers, a lot of stuff. I did the Nebraska women's gymnastics meet last night, and the Huskers fell a little shy against Michigan State, but they had a nice little comeback. It was a good little show. So it was fun. It was nice to be back at the Devaney Center and reminisce about those great days of Nebraska men's gymnastics and women's gymnastics when Francis Allen was the king of the sport in college. And anybody who's a longtime Husker fan remembers the Francis Allen days. He was as much of a legend as Tom in his sport. And he and Devaney were, two from the same pod. So that was the glory days of men's gymnastics at Nebraska, but he's also been the godfather for the women's team as well. So it's fun to do sports like that and reminisce about the old days. But, people may not believe this, especially those who weren't around in the 80s and 90s, but Nebraska used to put in 10, 15,000 people for the NCAA men's gymnastics championships at the Devaney Center. And it got to be such a hotly contested competition that they said, well, we can't have Nebraska, hosting every year the national championships. Let's move it to UCLA, where they put in literally dozens of people and basically killed the sport. So anyway, that's an editorial comment, but it was fun. It was fun last night, and Heather Brink's team put on a good show.
That's good stuff, man. It's interesting to kind of hear what was going on, what happened, and it wasn't broke, yet the NCAA tried to fix something. Wow.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Well, it would be like
a grenade pit on this thing.
It would be akin to this, that, back in the days, and people would tongue in cheek say that the best thing for the College World Series in Omaha was Tony Sharp and John Sanders. And, nice gentlemen, but Nebraska didn't have a lot of great success in college baseball, through many, decades. And then Dave Van Horn comes along, revolutionizes the program. And then all of a sudden, Nebraska is a threat, not just to go to the College World Series, but to go to the College World Series. But as long as Nebraska was not going to be a threat to go to Omaha every year, well, it thrived at Rosenblatt. And then Creighton had that great run with Jim Hendry and made it there and electrified the city. But had Nebraska been an annual participant in the College World Series, it's entirely possible that the NCAA would have said, well, we can't have this. We got to move it to Minnesota or Chicago or some other place because it's too much of a home field advantage. Well, that's the way it was for gymnastics back in the day when Nebraska was producing Olympians. Francis Allen was in charge of the Olympic program and Nebraska's program, all of that stuff. And they decided, well, we can't have this anymore. So let's just, kill the sport, which is what they did.
Elijah, how was your night? Did you catch Husker Baseball?
I was watching, first off, some Team USA on the ice against
Kansas. How about that?
Oh, my God. The 3 fights in the first 10 seconds. They were
don't
ass.
Boo the national anthem. You won't get hit.
So yeah, that was awesome to see. I also learned, I went down and checked out Lincoln Exposed yet again, downtown Lincoln, going and seeing some live acts. I think I am now officially too old for a mosh pit. My thumb is killing me this morning.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah. I saw it going down. I'm like, oh, this could be fun. It was fun until I left the bar, and I'm like, I'm in a lot of pain actually right now. So that was good to see. Husker Baseball obviously took care of business. And to get back to your point, Bill, that you were making, like, one thing I do respect about how the Big Ten operates with baseball is that they just throw the Big Ten tournament in Omaha and say, yeah, Nebraska gets the home field advantage. We don't care. Nebraska fans sell tickets.
Right.
Nobody else sells tickets. I respect the hell out of that about the Big Ten. I know we're a couple months away from the Big Ten tournament, but that's great that they just say, you know what, Nebraska's going to get a home field advantage every year in the Big Ten tournament, and we don't care because we want the ticket sales.
Let's give our shout outs before we dive into a big bounce back for Nebraska baseball as they hammered Vandy 6-4. Really good stuff, much needed. And they got one for Greg Sharp. Absolutely. That was a lot of the theme last night from Will Bolt, the players. And that was really heartwarming to see. Other Dave says lots of Husker fans in attendance last night in Scottsdale. Looking at my backyard that's snow covered. I absolutely wish I was in Scottsdale. Captain says rip Greg Sharp. We're going to miss him calling games. Justin's here. What a turnaround for Big Red Baseball. Coach Brandon's in. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, says great win for Bolton the boys last night. Greg was smiling down on that one. Mike in from Cali. Kobe is here. Mike, another Mike, checks in. Arlo is here. NASCAR Eric says, morning, fellas. Happy Daytona 500. NASCAR Eric, appreciate you checking in on Daytona Day. Brian Snitley's here, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. We have both parts, both arms, both branches of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Steve is here. Walter is in. Tyler, good to have you, Tyler. Game Dog checks in. Good to have Game Dog here. Steven in. Appreciate you. We'll have more comments. Brent says what's up as well. And guys, what a big win for Nebraska baseball. Let's start there. We'll get to Huskers and Northwestern in a little bit. And what a scene, as I kind of was front and center watching Auburn and Bama yesterday, 1v2 for the first time ever. When it comes to basketball, with those two rivals squaring off, and our dear friend and Average Joe alum, now the commissioner for SEC basketball, Garth Glissman, will be with us here around 11:30. So Game Dog says, come on, Elijah. I was 47 years old when Slayer came to Omaha in 2019, set the tone physically in the mosh pit that night. You're never too old to mosh pit. I last mosh pitted with 9 Inch Nails back in 1999 and lost that night, and never again.
I think it comes down to practice. Like, you can't be a one-off mosh pit like every 5 years kind of guy. You got to have
you just can't show up and drive it 300 yards at the tee box.
It's like Husker football, like where you talk about Matt Rule's bringing the physicality back. They want to tackle in practice so they can tackle in the game. It's right. Kind of similar for a mosh pit. If you're not practicing it, you're not going to go perform that night. You're going to get injured. That's how I think I just need more practice with the mosh pit, maybe.
Okay, I was at Pet Rock the other night at the Astro in Omaha. If there had been a mosh pit at a Yacht Rock show, the amount of broken hips and orthopedic business that would have been done in Omaha would have been astronomical. So let's just say the crowd was curious and well behaved on Friday.
How are the hors d'oeuvres? Were they good?
The whole show is good. That's the best band around. Especially for those a little north of 30, shall we say.
Uh-huh.
But there was no mosh pitting at a Pet Rock show.
How about the night for Gabe Swanson? 3 for 4, a bomb, couple of doubles, ties his career high with 6 RBI. Nebraska jumps out early on Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt answers, and Ty Horn, what a big moment for him, fellas. We've talked a lot about Horn's talent, mentality, and the talk was quite honestly about maturity for him this offseason. Not that he's out jacking around or mosh pitting, but just from a control and his repertoire and preparation standpoint. But Horn goes 4 innings, no decision for him, but again, 6 strikeouts, couple of walks. But Nebraska's bullpen really stood up, Elijah. And of course, you had some big time yeoman work by Gabe Swanson, and full of emotion last night for Nebraska baseball. They wanted to go get one for Greg Sharp, but they wanted to also big picture. All right, respond. They're in prime position with this Desert Classic, and it didn't go well at all from a throw and strike standpoint in the opener against Irvine, who's really, really good. But you don't have a chance to lick your wounds against Directional State the next ball game. It's Vanderbilt that came in, and this was great for Nebraska, and this is going to be RPI gold for them come May. And that's why you schedule it. But more importantly, this thing will give you a ton of confidence. I know they have San Diego State tonight at 6 on MLB.com, but it's what you wanted to see. You had Gabe kind of go Reggie Jackson yet again, and just was on a tear. Drilled some really tough pitches, or at least some tough counts. That's also what's impressive with when you look at his at-bats and when he did his work.
Yeah, I had this one written down. I've set it up, so I'm going to throw it in here. I was moshing on a Saturday night. Gabe Swanson was mashing on a Saturday.
Thank you. Yes.
Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, but Gabe Swanson, have yourself a night. Like, did anybody else have fun last night for the Huskers? Like, save some batting for the rest of the team. I joke. It's good to see him picking up where he left off at the end of last season. It's a 2-game sample size, but that night he had last night, like Will Bolt talked about the fact that Swanson at the end of last year was playing like one of the best players in the country. And last night he played like one of the best players in the country. He took advantage of a horrible 0-2 pitch. Let's lay that out. Like
the old hanger and banger. Yeah.
The hanging breaking ball, but he crushed that thing 110 off of the bat, and it goes 420 feet to left center. He absolutely smoked that thing. 6 RBIs. Have yourself a night. It's kind of when Nebraska needed. If you want to be a team that's in contention for Omaha, that's in contention to host a regional, it comes down to respect. Like the NCAA, the selection committee needs to respect you if you want to host a regional and to go beat a Vanderbilt team in the first weekend of the season. I know it's early and I know there's a lot that can change. That's the first step towards earning some respect from the selection committee in order to go get a Lincoln regional, to go get a super regional somewhere down the road. And it's tough to do that out of the Big Ten. Getting a win over Vanderbilt's going to help. I know it's probably not the Vandy teams we've been used to in recent years with Leiter and Kamar Rocker and those teams that are stacked with talent. I don't think that's this Vandy team this year. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't care if I'm a Nebraska fan.
But yeah, Vandy's still a brand, and it still earns you some respect on a national, from a national point of view, to go beat a Vanderbilt baseball team. So good to see from the Huskers. A lot of season left, and I'm getting ahead of myself talking about hosting a regional. You got to go take care of your midweeks this year. You got to go take care of damn near every weekend in the Big Ten. That's what it's got to be. But getting a win over Vandy's big.
We talked about it yesterday that for Nebraska, this is a really good strength of schedule season opening trip to Arizona. UC Irvine is one of those baseball programs or one of those schools that has a quality baseball program. It's like a Dallas Baptist, or when the Dirtbags at Long Beach State or Cal Fullerton, you don't hear a lot about them in any other sport, but that's a really, really good baseball program. So to lose to UC Irvine, disappointing, yes. To come back and beat a name brand in college baseball like Vanderbilt the very next day, it speaks volumes. I think this is going to go a long way. I said yesterday, I think this has to be a 2-2 trip. 3-1 is great. But you beat San Diego State, perhaps, or you beat Grand Canyon in its home territory, maybe. But 2-2 would be a great start, especially when the marquee win is over a team like Vanderbilt. Now, I go back to the emotion of the moment last night, and Greg Sharp is a beloved voice of Nebraska football, but when you're a sportscaster, when you're an announcer, and I tell my students this all the time, or any young professional, in baseball, you're not an announcer only except when called upon. Otherwise, you're a conversationalist, and you engage in a conversation and relationship with the fans who love to have the transistor radio with them at a baseball game, even to this day. But you also, as an announcer or a baseball person, that's where you'll develop more of a relationship with the baseball team. We're not in the business to become friends. Vin Scully would famously say, "I'm not friends with the Dodgers," even though he was the most preeminent baseball voice in the history of the game and was affiliated with the team for 67 years. But you do become, part of the culture of that clubhouse because you're around every day. College baseball isn't every day like Major League Baseball, but you're around that team. You tell the stories of the players, you get to know them so that you can tell the stories during those conversations. So this is a long way of saying, I think that the emotional relationship that Nebraska baseball has with Greg Sharp was very special. And I'm as a sportscaster, I always enjoyed my affiliation with the Salt Dogs. It's independent baseball. It's not the highest level of the game, but you enjoy the day in and day out. And I think that they were emotionally charged yesterday. And to come out the way they did in the first inning, after the disappointing performance in the opener, it wasn't like they had to scratch their way to a victory yesterday. They came out in inning one and put a 3-spot on the board. And Swanson comes through with a bases clearing double, and that set the tone for the whole day. Vanderbilt was trying to play catch up. They were trying to scratch back. And I do think emotions played a role in what happened. The pitching was better. Rob Childress, I'm sure, had a conversation with his boys after UC Irvine. Horn came out, pitched well. Wordley got the win. You got to save. But there's just something I think kind of spiritual about the win yesterday, and to do it against a team like Vanderbilt, that could set the tone for the rest of this weekend. I don't want to get too into it, but I just really respect the effort Nebraska gave on such an emotional day like that. Now, okay, get back to the X's and O's and nuts and bolts. You got to do well in a series like this. I'm still worried more about Nebraska in the midweek. When you get the directional hyphenateds and the local teams coming to town and putting everything that they can into beating Nebraska on a Tuesday or Wednesday, that's where Will Bolt has to have this team clean things up.
Well, and it has been an ongoing issue. You have the arms to do it. I mean, you're 12 deep with your staff, and a guy that may just miss out on being a Sunday guy is going to be where you tab him for Tuesday/Wednesday. And you've got some young arms and you've maybe got some older arms, but you have choices that need to go out and perform. And through 2 games, this is not an overreaction. This is just quick early snapshot. What needs to move forward better, and it's always going to be the case, is balls versus strikes. And Nebraska was good with their ratio last night, but you had some free passes in the first game against Irvine. You had what was the total here from a walks standpoint with Nebraska baseball?
5 walks last night, but none in the last 3+ innings.
Right. I was getting there. I was trying to spit that out. Yeah. Once you get to the 7th and beyond, you can't be handing out free passes. So, no, that'll be something to keep watching. You need Nebraska's offense, whether it's a whole lineup or it's going to be your dude in Gabe Swanson all season long. That's a big ask, but Nebraska can learn from this, move on from it, but they need to, they'll settle, but they just need performance, right? They need guys to go out and perform. The bigger topic of emotion and sport, you hear coaches talk about that a lot. And I think about our chats Monday with Charlie McBride, and over the years, you can hear him talking about playing for your family, playing for a teammate that you've kind of grinded away with for 3-4 years. The guy next to you is what he talks about. That ability to tap in to emotion can take you to higher places when it comes to performance and on the field. It's not an automatic turn it on switch, but for big ball games or big response moments, it can absolutely be a 12th man out there for you. And it is so hard to overcome if you got a team playing on emotion, whatever the sport, whatever the field. If they're locked in on emotion, I mean, it's a superpower, quite frankly.
I remember the 98 Orange Bowl, Tom's last game against Tennessee, and we had our Husker Vision cameras in the locker room, and Charlie took his black shirts. They're all packed into this in uniform into this shower, right? And as much as we love the gruff exterior of Charlie McBride, and the fear that he put into his black shirts when when he spoke, and he talked about carrying the 2x4 or whatever, but the speech that he gave to his team about going out and winning for Coach Osborne, it was not an impassioned speech. It was a from the heart to his players, and I think he was speaking for himself, not just guys go out and win it for Tom, but it was like, I want you to go out and that night, got off to a sluggish start, right? But Nebraska just thoroughly dominated the second half of that game and won it in Nebraska fashion. But yeah, emotions like that, and if when people certainly understand the context and what somebody might mean to a certain program, then you're really dialed in culturally. And so maybe last night's game with Nebraska baseball is a good sign for what Will Bolt has put together. The culture of the off season, maybe there's some chemistry and camaraderie that's on the right path. That if those guys understand the emotion of the moment last night in a game like Vanderbilt, like that bodes really well too. And you don't have to worry about, okay, how do we touch the right nerve with them so that they understand? Maybe they already have that understanding, and that can go a long way this season.
Well, and to look at the Husker baseball team as a whole, I mean, they're one of the among the men's sports, the teams that I think you can put on a hill and say, look at their culture. Like the culture of the baseball team for years and years and years has been an example for the other sports. Like you had the gritty beats pretty team that gave Arkansas all they could handle in the regional.
Yeah,
you look at last year to come out of the losers bracket in the Big Ten to keep on fighting. You get absolutely killed in the first game, and Husker fans going, okay, this is no good for Nebraska. Like they're going to bow out of the Big Ten tournament early. Everyone was writing them off, and they come together, they battle through the losers bracket, and they win the Big Ten tournament last year. And you look at last night, I'm with you, Bill. It shows the culture whenever you're able to band together through a tough day where you lose Greg Sharp. I mean, the emotions are running high. To be able to come together and to battle out and get a win against a Vandy team, like it further underscores the culture that Will Bolt has built in that baseball program.
You make a great point bringing up that Arkansas series. Nebraska did not win that. That was a super regional, wasn't it? Or was that the regional?
That was the regional.
Regional, but
the number one overall team.
Right, but the way they played there, and wasn't there the New Jersey Institute of Technology was there, and I don't remember who the
New Jersey School of Trucking, yes,
yeah, and waste management and textiles,
yeah,
right. Yeah. That series may have done more for Will Bolt's establishing his program. Now, that's been a couple years ago, and they've gone through some lows since then. But I think Nebraska baseball fans fell in love with Will Bolt's program that weekend and the grittiness. Yeah, grittiness in that series, coming up short, making people believe. But that regional went a long way in establishing things. And, take it back when wasn't it his first weekend was the COVID season. They go down to Arizona State, they beat the Sun Devils like 1 or 2 games, and all of a sudden the season shuts down. And it's just such a great start. But I think I would love to ponder that a little bit more, that Arkansas series, that's where the culture of Nebraska baseball under Will Bolt was born. And, seeing what they did last year at the Big Ten tournament, and Yeah, it's a fun team to watch, and based on what they have done the first couple of games and the promise for this season, it might be a fun couple of months in Lincoln at Haymarket.
You know that this baseball team, this head coach will dedicate the year to Greg, and they're going to be playing for something bigger all season long, and that is going to be special. They're going to give it their all for Greg and his family, but they're going to give it their all for one another as well, and that can be an absolutely powerful thing. We'll kind of wrap on baseball, can continue to have your comments here in the stream. It's the Average Joe Sports Show, Sunday live, 10:30. Gary Sharp on assignment, traveling back. Garth Glissman, about 30 minutes away, the commissioner of SEC basketball and kind of high up in the SEC G unit was on site for Bama and Auburn last night. Pretty cool here from Brian Snitley, big baseball guy. He was looking at some of the numbers here. Timmerman getting pretty good break on that sinker. Broderick, of course, he's been tapped to be the old fireman, come in and close her down. His slider was big time. And you hit those pitches, man, you have no shot in the batter's box. Can you do it consistently? Speaking of consistency, what happens at Northwestern is that you are going to try and get out of there alive. Everybody that's gone into Northwestern, as we talk a little hoops here, some folks have survived, some have not, but it's been about 3 or 4 overtime games in conference play. It's been about a 4 or 5 point game winner for a lot of power teams, and I'm talking the Spartys of the world, I'm talking the Purdue's of the world. Very few teams go in there and drill Northwestern.
Why is that?
Because it's friends and family only first that are in the crowd. But
it's a Schnapps bottle basketball arena too. You can hear it when it gets tipped over, just like
somebody spilled.
You can hear, clean up in aisle 5, and there's nobody sitting there. It mystifies me. It's not like it's Fog Allen or the old Nebraska Coliseum in volleyball or Cameron Indoor. What is it that makes Northwestern? Is it library quiet? You don't want to disturb anybody?
I think they've had their moments.
Don't disrupt the Dewey Decimal System here, okay, at Northwestern.
Now, they're good players. They hang around, and it's one of those bring your own energy venues. and quite honestly, they're probably, despite the fact they've gone to a couple of tournaments under Collins, they find guys. They are skilled. They're really a pain in the neck to deal with at home, and they've always played Nebraska well at PBA. So line right now is Nebraska -1.5, but Nebraska needs to be among those counted that, yes, we too were scared, but survived the Northwestern experience. And the latest news, game time decision for Berke. We'll see if he can go or not. It probably might be a little too soon to go with him or chance it, so to speak. But from a health standpoint, it sounds like Bryce and Connor Esijan are doing better. And it sounds like that things didn't kind of rip through the locker room. That was pretty big. Fred was talking about, Elijah, about preventative stuff to not. All right, so we got Connor and Bryce back. Wonderful. Everybody else is sick as a dog. I don't think that's the case.
Well, see, and that's what I was worried about yesterday. I'm not sure if you guys saw this. You get a week where you're dealing with the flu, and now you're practicing on a Saturday afternoon at Michael Jordan's former mansion in Chicago. I'm like, oh no,
that was cool.
Is Fred Hoiberg setting up that? Well, Michael Jordan played with the flu, so you guys going to play with the flu.
Well, everybody wants to have a flu game of that caliber. My Lord, I remember watching Jordan versus Utah.
Yeah, so that was my concern yesterday. If the health of the team is good, though, like Nebraska out-talents this Northwestern team. It's tough to go on the road in the Big Ten, but it always comes down to the conversation. is this must win or can't lose? And this feels like a can't lose kind of game, even though you're going on the road to Northwestern. It's been a place where you've struggled in recent years. And I think you can say the same later in the week about Penn State. Like, tough place to go and win, but you have your eyes set on the NCAA tournament. I said it on our show, I believe it was last weekend, 4-3 down the stretch over the final 7. You're already 0-1 with that loss to Maryland, but 4-3 down the stretch gets you to 500 in Big Ten play. And I think gets you into the NCAA tournament. A game against Northwestern's one you got to have, and realistically against Penn State, you got to have that one too if you want to be getting to 4-3. There's some tough matchups on the schedule. You're on the road against Ohio State here in a couple weeks. Like, there's some tough matchups coming up, but 4-3 gets you in. I think going 2-0 on this road trip to Northwestern and Penn State would be a big step in the right direction. It gives you some wiggle room with your final couple games this season.
Well, get back to 500, Bill. You are so close to 500 in league play right now. And you could have been at 500 had you not dropped one to Maryland. And if mysteriously pizza shows up at Michael Jordan's mansion, don't eat it.
The famous conspiracy theory in Salt Lake City.
I ate the pizza.
Right,
no, you played piano till 4 a.m.
Yeah. Michael Jordan's ordering Domino's at 4 o'clock in the morning in Salt Lake City. That I just don't buy.
I think Michael Jordan was entertaining. He always had a baby grand piano in his rooms. And I think he maybe was just a little dehydrated the next morning. Wasn't the extra pepperoni.
Well, and we all watched the Jordan documentary. Like, he was always looking for an extra edge, a reason to hate the team he was playing, or the fan base of the team he was playing. Like, it makes total sense for him to be like, it was the pizza. Like, I'm also kind of with Bill. I'm not sure how much I buy that story, but it's good lore. So if it adds to Michael Jordan's legacy, it adds to Michael Jordan's legacy.
He made himself sick so he could have a game like that. That's what it was.
The reckoning.
But Nebraska's playing two teams that are combined 26 and 25 on the year. And Northwestern's lost two of its better players to season-ending injuries. I think that's combined like 31 points. Now, they've been able to adjust over the last couple of weeks to not having them in the lineup, but that's pretty significant, right? And they're game over 500 on the season. I'm still mystified that Nebraska's lost 8 of its last 9 games against them. Penn State started 12-2 on the year, and they're now 12-12. They just blew a game at home against Washington. At home against Washington, who had to go from Seattle to find Happy Valley. No, first to find Harrisburg and then find Happy Valley, right? They lost at home to one of the bottom feeders in the Big Ten. And if Nebraska goes 1-1 on the road trip, they say, well, you held serve.
No,
these are can't lose, must win games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care which one you want to pick. They're both. There's no shame in losing to Maryland. You had a chance to win it, as with so many other games Nebraska's had this year where they've had a chance to win. They've got 9 losses and 6 have come down to the last possession or thereabouts in the final minute. But you can't lose to a team that's playing without 2 of its better players, no matter how well they've been able to adjust in 2 weeks. And then Penn State, they were 2-1 in league play at one point. And now they're just completely reeling. It's like the season's gone and they're ready to pack it in, and they've already made their bus trip plans for Daytona at spring break. So I think these are must and have to games for Nebraska. You can't have losses like this be part of the conversation. Comes selection Saturday and Sunday.
Well, to me, I'm watching the free throw line. Nebraska has been fantastic in their wins, home or away. I mean, I'm wowed, especially that Northwest trip to Oregon and Washington. The number of times Nebraska got to the line, they converted. What kind of kicked off some high hopes in league play was Nebraska's win to start 2025 against UCLA, where the final 7 minutes they didn't have a field goal, but they got to the free throw line 15 times and hit 13 of them. Nebraska's free throw attempts weren't where they needed to be against Maryland. Nebraska at the rim finishing wasn't what it needed to be against Maryland. They need to, hopefully, these last couple of days reassess where their eyes were at when they were going to the rim, because there was just too many shots where they got to drive. There was a contest for sure, and you had big dudes at the rim protecting, so it wasn't an easy task. But Nebraska kind of threw their body into some of the defenders, threw a wild shot up, and here comes a quick, easy two the other way because of those transition points Fred talks about. But get to the free throw line, make the official use their whistle, begrudgingly or not, and then just take smart shots. I mean, Nebraska's able to get into that mode, but it's got to be a commitment thing, and you can't start out wild with just what your takes are and your finishing percentage at the rim. You get to the rim, you get points. You get to the rim, you get fouled, and you get free points, presumably. That's going to be your key. We got to be good on the glass. And Northwestern can't be the latest team that goes, 50% from three-point land today. Defense got to travel as well.
Nebraska's 85% from the free throw line its last 3 games. Far better than during that 6-game losing streak.
You mean the 60% they were at?
Yeah, like 64%, something like that. And so
my science grade.
So look, you're getting to the line and you're making your shots. Maybe get to the line a little bit more. Brian Snitley's asking, will Gary be aggressive finishing at the rim or throwing it up hoping for a foul? I assume he's talking about Jawan Gary and not Gary Sharp. But
no, Sharpie
I
finishes around the rim, and for the most part, so does Gary. But there's been a handful of games where it's not been the case.
Yeah, but I think Nebraska has got to. You mentioned it. Their production sometimes with points at the rim or shots at the rim, it's amazing to me how low that percentage is. Oftentimes, they get the ball right there and can't put it down. And how is that so consistently possible that they make it impossible to make baskets down there? That's got to improve.
Yeah, you're just looking for the whistle. You're looking for the whistle, and honestly, it might come down to just not wanting to get embarrassed. You don't want to get that bleep out of here, right? Get it swatted into the third row. And it's a task, man. As big and talented as Gary is and some of Nebraska's other options down there in the paint region, there's some monsters they're going up against in the Big Ten, and it's no good. So Husker basketball, I am erring on the side of can't lose. That's what these next two are. If you're a betting man, fellas, do they split? Do they put Nebraska basketball fan into freak out mode where they go 1-1 or dare I say worse? Or are you kind of hedging on that? Well, they'll get it handled. They'll make it interesting. You'll sweat it out today. You'll sweat it out later this week, but they'll find a way.
I think if they win at Northwestern, they win at Penn State.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it's a little bit like the Oregon trip. Nobody expected them to beat Oregon, and then they fell behind against Washington. I never thought that they were really out of it against Washington. Washington came out and hit first 7 or 8 3-point shots. You can't stay that hot when you're that team, right? Maybe a Wisconsin can or somebody that can put some points on the board, and they're going to be consistent for 35 or 40 minutes. I never thought Washington was going to be able to maintain a 42-point pace, and they didn't. And Nebraska turned it around and won in the second half and won the game. But I think winning at Oregon predicated what happened in Seattle. And if Nebraska wins at Northwestern today, gets that juice of momentum and confidence, they carry it to Happy Valley. I think last night's game with Penn State and Washington just completely destroys their season. And if you lose to a team that's, what are they? They've lost 11 of their last 12. Mm-hmm. you can't let them start to feel good and have their one shining moment by beating Nebraska. The second half of Nebraska's road trip. They just can't let that happen. I think if Nebraska wins today, they sweep the trip. And then you set yourself up to play. I think it's Michigan's the next one.
Michigan a week from tomorrow.
You beat Michigan at home. And the kind of effort you gave against against Maryland, I think is good enough to beat Michigan. Maryland just is a very good team right now. There's no shame in that loss. But if you give that same kind of effort at home, fans give the same kind of effort at PBA that they've been doing all season, except for those who leave with 3 minutes to go in the game. You beat Michigan, that wipes off or that balances out the loss to Maryland, and Nebraska's in. Win their next 3, they're in. Mm-hmm. Split the next 2, you shouldn't. You should win those 2 as well. But if you win out from here on out, which they certainly can. Ohio State, but I don't think you go to the Big Ten tournament having to win a game to get in.
Well, wouldn't you like to be talking about seeding for the NCAA tournament in the Big Ten tournament as opposed to will they get in?
Yeah, right.
What I want to ask you this: what do you guys believe right now about the Big Ten as a whole? What do you believe about the SEC? The reveal happened yesterday where 3 of your top 4 seeds are SEC teams. I look at Houston and just the work they did. I mean, they don't lose, and they don't lose on the road, and they don't lose in crazy environments. For them to go get a win at Arizona, I think Arizona's a hell of a club. I mean, for Houston's just going to absolutely grind you down. The way they play defense, as physical as they are, impressive. I looked at that Bama game yesterday where they were 19% from 3. Their leading score, we were talking 18.17 shots, 2 of 11 from 3. As much fun and as athletic and as talented as Bama is, they just don't really care about taking great shots. Meanwhile, I got Auburn going high-low. They're built on hitting some big threes, even some transition threes, but they're tough. They rebound, and then they always look to get the ball inside. And I know that's not necessarily what you see in the NBA anymore, but it's the old way is still the good way, where you find a big man down low and you get it. I think Auburn's absolutely, clearly they're number 1 in the country, but they're absolutely for real, where they had 5 guys in double-digit scorings. They had 42 bench points. They had their top 2 dudes foul out. They're on the road against number 2, in-state rival they hate. Doesn't matter. They go put a double-digit spot on the road. You lose a double-digit lead, with about the 8-minute mark or 10-minute mark, it might have been. The place is bananas, and here comes Auburn, and they just start going body blows again on you. So I was pretty fascinated to watch yesterday's day of college basketball. Big Ten, I hope it isn't an either or with Nebraska or Ohio State. I'd like to see this Ohio State team in. I think they're right there from a physicality standpoint. I think Maryland can do damage. I think UCLA might put a run together. Wisconsin's really good. That was a big win, Elijah, by Wisconsin on the road at Purdue. I mean, Wisconsin can do a lot of things to people.
Well, the question, though, to me is maybe I'm looking too far ahead here, but do you feel confident in any Big Ten team to think they can make a run to the Elite 8?
I think there's going to be somebody from the Big Ten that gets to the Elite 8. Probably. I mean, I think Sparty could absolutely do it. I think Michigan could do it with their bigs, but I think Maryland could. And we're going to burn this video here if if the Big Ten gets 10 or 11 in and nobody's past the Sweet 16. That'd be awful.
Hey, look what Wisconsin did, though. This is a Wisconsin team, I think, that's playing much differently than most Wisconsin teams we've been used to. Their basketball program has often kind of been as successful as it is, a little bit like its football program, just, great offensive linemen and turning out points and like turning out yards. Mm-hmm. This seems much more like an athletic, high-minded offensive team. I mean, they put points on the board. and they can score in transition. They can shoot the three. I watched a little bit of the game yesterday with Purdue, and and of course their games with Nebraska.
Mhm.
I think it's one of the most athletic Wisconsin teams I've seen in a long time. I don't see why they couldn't make a bit of a run. I really like Maryland, though. We've talked about that ad nauseum now for the last several days, but I really like where Maryland is at right now. Can they keep that going for the next several weeks? That I don't know, but they're hot right now. Is Illinois a team that can put together a bit of a run? I'm not sure, but I like Michigan State. Michigan's been really good with the new coach right away, right out of the gate. Now, can they match what the SEC is going to do? I'm not quite sure there. And hey, let's not discount this too. You mentioned this earlier, Chris. Garth Glissman, spent some time as an Average Joe on the Average Joe Sports Show. I don't think we can discount the influence of the Average Joe Sports Show on the success of the Southeastern Conference in basketball now that Garth Glissman is the godfather of the league.
It's either you're welcome or I'm sorry.
Well, but look, without him being on the Average Joe Sports Show years ago, I'm not sure the SEC basketball is where it is today.
Well, that's that. We will make him absolutely feel uncomfortable here in about 10 minutes. We're trying to get Garth to talk about himself. Garth is amazing at talking.
Not about himself, about us.
Talking to everybody and knowing everybody. But hey, this is really cool. And quite honestly, the SEC footprints not sure what to do with themselves because it ain't football season yet.
One other thing about you mentioned Houston. In all my years calling Big 12 basketball on ESPN and all the coaches I've gotten to see at work, Kelvin Sampson still remains to this day, if not the most impressive basketball coach I've been around. He's in the top 2 or 3. It's amazing to watch him conduct a practice. And he was with the Rockets when I was down there in Houston. He was an assistant to Kevin McHale, but watching him with his Oklahoma teams, and you go in on a Friday and watch the way they go through their walkthrough and their scouts and all that. It's something I remember to this day. And Houston, when they hired him, that was a brilliant move by them. They've got experience having been in the Final Four. Is this as good a team as the one that went to the Final Four? I'm not sure. But that program now has that experience and that belief that they can get back there, and they have the coach that can get them there and potentially win it. And I think Bruce Pearl he's
good, man.
Right.
I think he's very, very motivating.
When he was out of coaching for whatever reason, and boy, isn't this era of college athletics perfectly made for a guy like Bruce Pearl?
Yeah.
But I think Bruce Pearl, he's got that gregarious personality when he was on ESPN, and people get to see that side of him, and he's a fun listen and all that. It's a very different personality than Kelvin Sampson. But when they've got their teams in practice and they've got their teams in a shoot around, and when they're talking about X's and O's, they're the same guy. I think he's a tremendous basketball coach. It's just that his personality, and the fun-loving guy that he is at Auburn with the students and, back in the day, face painting and wearing the T-shirts and all that, I think maybe his coaching acumen gets a little bit lost in that over-the-top personality. Kelvin Sampson, similarly, is a great X's and O's guy, motivates his players, but just doesn't have that gregarious nature about him. But I think those two guys may be the two best coaches in college basketball right now.
Well, you have
veteran coaches.
Kelvin that's quiet and calculating, and then you see him stare through people and bark his orders like he is absolutely
announcers.
A drill sergeant. Nate Oates, his story's phenomenal because he's the old math teacher from Michigan that has been incredible. We're talking 2 SEC titles and a Final Four. And then Pearl is just, he's a guy you're not sure if you buy it from him, it's going to work, but you want to spend money with him. you just like his personality. But no, I'm pretty fascinated to see how I'm excited. It's not that I haven't been excited. We were excited with Nebraska getting to the tournament last year. and how those first 5 minutes went back and forth against A&M, and then didn't go so well after that under 16 timeout. But no, Nebraska's in it. Nebraska's putting together a high level of competition year in and year out, where they're, at least in the conversation, right? You're contending for an NCAA tournament berth. That's pretty remarkable for Fred to have a second team in a row. That used to be, at least that was my wheelhouse growing up in junior high and into high school. Nebraska would always go to the NCAA tournament. You break your heart because they'd be an 8 or a 9 seed and get smoked by somebody, but they were going every year. There were great moments into February and into March where you had an amazing league with the Big 8 and then eventually the Big 12, and you had the personality of a Danny Neese. So Fred is he knows what he wants. He knows what he did at Iowa State, and he's been able to find the right pieces to get Nebraska on the doorstep there. They just got to go take care of business today, and eventually maybe it grows, and I don't know if it will, but the hope, if you're a Nebraska fan and if you're Fred, is to kind of go on cruise control. And what I mean by that is you're getting players either via the portal, or you're getting a high school guy to stick and stay. You're getting some Omaha kids to stay around because everyone else is using Omaha talent a school or two later to go for 40 in marquee ball games. You have all that working where it just continues to repeat itself, and you get a good groove. Much harder to do historically, much harder to do for Nebraska basketball, but they're on the verge of doing it for the first time in almost 30 years.
Quickly here, and I know we're talking basketball. We got Garth Glissman coming on the show here in just a couple of minutes, so looking forward to that. I do think we need to spend a moment on Jordy Bahl. Throwing a no-hit.
Yes, that was on the list. Yes.
I just know we're kind of up against it because Garth's going to be hopping on here in a second. So I do want to quickly, have we looked at her numbers this year?
Incredible.
It was a high billing when she came to Nebraska. The no-hitter was awesome to see, but a 0.3 ERA on the season. Oh, and not to mention,
we go back to my academic record.
Yeah, not to mention a 455 batting average and a slugging percentage over 1250. We all knew how good she was coming to Nebraska. You didn't get to see it last year. Dear God, is she putting up some numbers this year to start the year? That's the best player in college softball. You have her at Nebraska. Enjoy it while you can. It's just been an impressive start to the season. I know the no-hitter was only 5 innings yesterday. It's still a no-hitter. So hats off to Jordy.
Well, it was a 5-inning no-hitter because they put up 40 runs. So,
well, yeah, the old run rule.
It helps when you a little, support. So without that support at the plate, who's Jordy Bahl, right? Would they score 28 runs yesterday in 11 innings or something like that of play? Now, granted, they won the Big Sky title with their wins over Montana and Northern Colorado, but doesn't matter if you
play on the field against you.
Yeah. If you're dealing siege, you're dealing siege. Last year they were going to bring in, the new seats and the extra seating, and at the softball at Bowling Stadium. They're probably going to want to dust those plans off, because when they come back to town, people are going to want to see her pitch and hit. And I don't know her. I just know what I know of her. I'm guessing that she's going to be accessible to fans. And she got a chance to experience Nebraska softball last year from the sidelines. And now she's the star that everybody expected her to be. And everybody just hopes and prays she stays healthy so that Nebraska fans have a chance to appreciate one of their own for this season. And I guess she's got another one. So
10 home runs yesterday, dude. That is awesome. Would you Cadillac it around the bases? Would you flip the bat? How would you do it?
Act like you've been there before, even though I'd never been there before.
So run to first, not third, right?
I need a map, but I would do it. I would do it in fine sportsman-like fashion.
Serrano, drop the bat. You can't take the bat with you around the bases.
Well, have you seen the guys in the Venezuelan baseball league whenever they hit home runs? Oh boy, those are some home run trots right there.
Tell me about it, dude.
Oh, they toss the bat, they're screaming at the dugout, they're high-fiving everybody, and that's all before they even get to first base. Like those guys, it's different down there. You ask how I would do it. I've never had to think about this question before.
Same.
I've never come close to hitting a home run.
I've given up a few where you got to turn around and watch it go.
Yeah, including beer league softball. I've never even been close. I'm the guy I get on first base in beer league softball and I let somebody else hit the home run and bring me around. Like that is my job. Get on first any way possible. Bloop single. That's me for sure. I'd like to think I'd act like I've been there before if I ever hit a home run. If I do though, like, I mean, there's got to be some emotion in there for me. I'm going to toss that bat probably.
Brother, if you're having problems in mosh pits right now, I'm guessing your days of hitting home runs are behind you as well.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So Steven says, all right, we have had Rocco Spindler on. We need to get Danny Nee on. Saw Danny last year when he made his trip in. We now have the basketball commissioner for the SEC, fresh off number 1 v number 2. Garth Glissman is with us here on the Sunday Live Average Joe Sports Show. Garth continues to do amazing things. And Garth, once upon a time, part of the Average Joe Sports Show. G-Unit, happy Sunday. Thanks for letting us break into family time. Tell Mama we're sorry.
Just got home from church and couldn't miss an opportunity to wish the three of you all the best as you embark on a new chapter of the Average Joe Sports Show. And I owe Chris and Bill, both of you, a debt of gratitude. Elijah, you're only excluded from this conversation because you're too young. But some 20 years ago, I met Chris Schmidt through our mutual friend John Baylor, and
hey,
after some conversation, Chris said, why don't you come join us from time to time on the afternoon show that we do called the Average Joe Sports Show. And that was right as I was finishing up my time as a student athlete at the University of Nebraska, was planning to go to law school, did go to law school. And I mean this with all sincerity, Chris and Bill, that without you guys giving me an opportunity to be, a part-timer on the Average Joe Sports Show, I'm not sure if I would be in the job that I have now and would have had the opportunity to work in sports that I've had. The reason being is, my football career at Nebraska didn't end the way that I wanted it to. And so, I was kind of bittersweet and ready to transition from, the sports part of my life to law school. And you guys gave me an opportunity to stay connected to sports in a meaningful way that I wasn't anticipating, and put me on this journey to stay involved in sports. And, the next thing you know, I'm doing high school radio games with Schmidt as his color guy, high school football, high school basketball. From that leads to an opportunity to be a high school basketball coach in the state of Nebraska, do that for 8 years. And then all of a sudden the NBA comes calling. They need a lawyer who has practical basketball knowledge.
The NBA needed a lawyer?
And that led to the SEC. So it means a lot to me for, to join you guys and wish you all the best. And you can't predict how life is going to unfold, but I mean that with the most sincerity that, I was finishing up as a college student athlete, was really ready to turn the page and focus on law school and all that would mean. And you guys floated me a lifeline, gave me a chance to stay connected with sports, and I'll be forever grateful.
Garth, you are the best. You are immensely talented. We have said it, but we need to say it publicly. Thank you for, and I mean this, spending time with us. I mean, that's your talent. You enhance things. You are incredible. So thank you. You are way too kind with your words there. But I mean, it's been a fun journey, man, hasn't it?
Well, I meant every word of it. And
same, I know.
You were only excluded from that conversation because I would happily trade places with you to be your age again. And Chris and Bill would too. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you in recent years. Elijah. And sports is such a beautiful thing. I grew up on a small farm outside of Lincoln, and I had no meaningful connections to the sports industry. My parents didn't work in sports. I just had a love of sports. And Chris and Bill, you have given me an opportunity to nurture that love of sports over time. And it's been life-changing for all of us, right? We've all, and Elijah, I know you can echo this sentiment, but sports means so much to so many people, impacts the trajectory of individual lives, and also brings people and communities together in a way that, no other aspect of society can. So, it's an honor to be on this show, and I'm thankful, Chris, Bill, and Elijah, for your friendship.
Well, quickly, go ahead, Elijah.
I'll say quickly here, it does feel like false advertising that we're the Average Joe Sports Show, and in back-to-back weeks, Rocco Spindler and Garth Glissman, some not so average Joes hopping on. So I'm going to quickly jump in and say that, but Bill, turn it over to you.
Well, what's impressive is to see what Garth has done in his career and coming from Nebraska. But what's it been like for you, Garth, to go to the NBA and now transition to where you are in the SEC, and you're heading up the arguably the most talked about basketball conference in the country at this point. And this is not a one-off. This is the future of college basketball with the success, but to be where you are in this new world that we're in collegiate athletics.
It's a special privilege to be a part of the SEC this year. When I started the job about 18 months ago, I talked to the coaches and everybody around the league was so bullish on the future of SEC basketball. And we had a very solid year last year. 2 teams in the Elite Eight. Tennessee played Purdue as well as you possibly could have played them in the Elite Eight. Didn't advance. Alabama, makes it to the Final Four. Plays UConn really tough in a semifinal round. We had 8 teams in the tournament last year, which was tied for the most among any conference. So we felt we were really knocking on the door last year, and then now in year 2, we added Texas and Oklahoma. We knew that would make us stronger, and the national perception is starting to catch up with, what insiders in the SEC were feeling last year. And that is that the future of SEC basketball is really bright. That said, you can't possibly expect the level of success that we've had to date. And of course, being in a sport that is decided by a single elimination tournament is very humbling. And I mean that with utmost sincerity, because I came from the NBA where the playoff is decided by 4 7-game series. And so, when you crown a champion at the end of the NBA season, that the champion is the best and most deserving team. The beauty of March Madness is it's a series of single elimination games. And it's both a blessing and a curse. The blessing is it creates tremendous excitement and drama for fans, one of the greatest sporting events in America. The downside is there are upsets. So there's a tremendous humility that comes with knowing that we're operating in an environment where ultimately we'll be measured by our success in a single elimination tournament. But as to where we stand today and the just thankfulness that I felt yesterday as I was watching the initial unveiling of the bracket preview, to have 3 of the top 4 seeds come from our conference, 5 of the top 6 seeds overall, because they actually rank them in terms of the overall seeds. So we had 1, 2, and 4, Auburn 1, Alabama 2, Florida 4, and then Tennessee 5, A&M 6, and then Kentucky comes in as a 3 seed. So 3 of the top 4, 5 of the top 6, 6 of the top 16. And you study the numbers and know that rarely happens in college basketball history. And so I'm enormously appreciative of the opportunity, the chance to work with an incredibly dynamic group of coaches. You look at the coaches in the SEC, legends, Hall of Famers, big personalities. You just go down the list. And then, to pair with some of those legends who are household names. We have some young up and comers, guys who I think can become the face of college basketball in the years to come. So I'm honored to be a part of the league. I feel like it's my job to help promote the league, which has been a fun job to do this year. And I also am mindful of the fact that seasons like this come around very infrequently. Statistically, you'd have to probably go back to the 83-84 ACC season to find a statistical peer for the SEC's performance this season. But the big difference is the ACC in 83-84 was an 8-team league, and we're doing it with twice as many teams at 16. So from where I sit, I'm just enormously thankful for all of the people that came before me to elevate SEC basketball. And now it's my job to try to take it to another level and be the best advocate for the league that I can be. And I'm doing that all with, an appreciation for the fact that this is a historically special season.
Garth Glissman with us here on the Average Joe Sports Show at Garth Glissman, G Unit, of course, the SEC Associate Commissioner for Men's Basketball. Garth, we've talked from time to time when you've been traveling around, and the stops you've made, the connections, the work you do with all of these coaches. You hit on just what is reality right now for this special season when you look at just how deep and powerful the SEC basketball slate is. You've been to a lot of sporting events. You've been to championships. You played in big games as a Husker. I'm interested to get, as you walk in, what was the feel as you walked into to Bama Auburn yesterday? Because think about that. You're talking two football heated and hated rivals that now took it to the hardwood where it's 1v2. And I mean, that it was a buzz all week for it. It was incredible.
The first time in SEC history, SEC basketball history, that the top two teams in the country were both in the SEC and played each other. And one of the things we tried to prioritize this year is more big games and rivalry games on Saturdays.
Yeah.
There actually had been many instances since 2016-17 that the basketball version of the Iron Bowl was played on a Saturday. And so I tried to do my listening and learning, and we made sure that was not going to be the case this year. Both Iron Bowl games are on a Saturday. We also had the basketball version of the Egg Bowl yesterday, Mississippi State. Both of those games are on Saturdays this year, Texas A&M. So we're doing everything we can to honor the tradition and passion of the fans. And Schmidt is to, what the experience was like yesterday in Tuscaloosa. So I try to approach my job with a servant's heart. So I started my day by doing security. I got there to greet Auburn to make sure that their arrival at the arena went smoothly.
Okay.
I'm hesitant. I think it's unfortunate that college athletics has adopted this kind of negative tribalism where it's like our conference versus your conference. And, there's a lot of comparisons, and, I think comparison can be the enemy of joy. And so I don't mean this to compare to other places, but, the culture of the South is different. There's a unique culture down here. There's unique kind of passion and enthusiasm for SEC sports. I think Nebraska fans can relate to that because for most of the states in our footprint, there's not a longstanding culture of successful pro sports teams. So just like in Nebraska, the major state institutions, universities, and their athletic programs are the biggest show in town. So there's tremendous pride that comes with that. And so there was an energy, there was a passion. The in-state rivalry obviously adds drama and intrigue. I will tell you, something happened yesterday in a basketball game that I hadn't seen since I was a kid watching an Oklahoma game. Billy Tubbs did this back in the day. Nate Oates actually took the microphone, for those of you who are watching, took the microphone during the game and told the fans to stop throwing things on the court. Now, I don't know that many fans were throwing anything, but there were a couple, I think, isolated incidents. And so the referees actually asked Coach Oates to do it. He did a really good job. Fun fact, when Billy Tubbs did it years ago when he was at Oklahoma, he delivered a not so subtle shot at the referee. So he gets on the mic and says something to the effect of, no matter how bad the officiating, do not throw anything on the court. So the ref picked him up for his PA announcement. And, like you, Chris, Bill, and Elijah, you're getting there now too. We're all sports historians. I hadn't seen anything like that in years. And I have this faint recollection of Billy Tubbs doing it as a kid. And so it's just a lot of fun moments in the SEC. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes the SEC unique is that passion. And it's just fun. There's just a excitement to SEC athletics. And I think fun is a good word to describe it. And my job at the conference office is to try to kind of create platforms for that. And so that we can, have big games on Saturdays. And Commissioner Sankey's charge when I first got here is, how do we make big events even bigger? And so that's what we're trying to do, and do that to honor the tradition and passion and fun that comes with being an SEC fan.
Well, I have no doubt that with your abilities, you'll probably figure out a way to get Oklahoma and South Carolina into the NCAA tournament as well. That's the kind of power the godfather of SEC basketball has this season. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the influence of the Average Joe Sports Show from years ago, getting the SEC where it is today. Garth, before we let you go, kind of a serious question here, but I know you're enjoying this great season with the SEC, but I'm sure your coaches are also asking you, pulling you aside and saying, what's next? What have you heard? Because we are in such a changing landscape of collegiate sports, and the SEC's got money, the Big Ten's got money, the other ones are trying to keep up. But what are you telling your coaches about what is next and how they can go about operating their business to maintain strength in the SEC and also be healthy with whatever the partnership is, the handshake agreement, the wink and the nod with the Big Ten, to maintain that superior going forward in this new era of college sports?
It's a great question, Bill. I'll answer it in two ways. One, I've encouraged our coaches to engage in a lot of what I call if-then scenario planning, meaning we don't know what the future will hold in college athletics, but we should think strategically about what the different scenarios might look like. And then if it's scenario one, then what are we going to do? Scenario two, then what are we going to do? You just go down the list, if-then type thinking. And that's, when I was starting off with the Average Joe Sports Show, that was being ingrained in my mind at the Nebraska College of Law. So if-then thinking is the first part of your is the first answer to your question, Bill. Just going through all the different scenarios, making sure that we're flexible and fluid, and have given the strategic thought on the front end to a variety of different circumstances that can unfold in the future. The second part of that, so I thank my training at the Nebraska College of Law for the first part of that question. The second part, I would attribute my time at the NBA for being able to kind of help the coaches see it in the sense that, and I'm not making a value judgment as to whether this is good or bad, but what I've told our coaches is you need to study professional sports, and you need to assume that college sports and the way it operates increasingly will look like professional sports. And so what does that mean? Well, it used to be when I was on the football team in Nebraska, Coach Solich had 85 scholarship offers to give, and Barry Collier had 13 men's basketball scholarship offers to give. So the scholarship that Eric Crouch was on the year he won the Heisman Trophy was the same scholarship that the 85th best scholarship player got. And so that's fairly straightforward analysis in terms of, from a coaching standpoint, am I offering this kid a scholarship? And then once they're in the locker room, everybody's, kind of on the same deal. You might have certain players that get more notoriety than others, but it's a pretty straightforward analysis. Now in college athletics, roster construction is starting to look a lot more like roster construction in pro sports, where virtually every player is on a different contract, and that requires much more nuanced analysis. It's also a much harder job. If you think about it, you're either offering, back in the good old days, you're either offering a scholarship, or in my case, I was offered a chance as a walk-on. I thought that was great. That's probably more than I deserved. But there's not a lot of nuance to that in comparison to, okay, I really need my star player, but how much am I going to pay him? And how does that affect my ability to pay all the other players on my roster and create depth, not only for this season, but down the road? And then if you extrapolate that out even further, how does that coexist within a structure where athletic departments are having to make those value judgments across sport? So not only are you making those value judgments within each sport, you're making those value judgments across each sport. And how are athletic programs going to value their football team relative to their men's and women's basketball team, relative to other programs that within the context of their community may have heightened value, whether it's Nebraska volleyball, Oklahoma softball, Iowa women's basketball, South Carolina LSU women's basketball. We all know there are certain programs across the country that may not be within the traditional revenue drivers, but they have tremendous kind of built up fan loyalty and engagement in their communities. And so how are universities going to prioritize those programs going forward? So all of that is to say, this type of analysis is something that's been happening in pro sports for a long time. There can be an agreement on how, okay, so-and-so is my best. We know Patrick Mahomes is the most valuable resource for the Chiefs, but what are they going to pay Patrick going forward? And how does that impact the rest of their roster construction? That's why in recent NFL history, there have been a number of teams that have done well with quarterbacks on their first contract before they start making big money, because that allows for more money to spread around other players. So I'm not making a value judgment that it's better for the overall health of college athletics to look more like pro sports, but I believe it to be true that college athletics increasingly will operate like pro sports, and therefore decision makers in college athletics would be wise to study how pro sports operate in rigorous detail and try to apply those learnings to college sports organizations going forward.
It's Garth Glissman with us here, Associate Commissioner of the SEC. And Garth, as we wind it down and get you out, we really appreciate your time here. I do have to ask, now that you're down in the South, now that you're a Southerner, does that mean you're required to watch the Daytona 500 this afternoon?
I'll be working this afternoon on some SEC stuff, so I will not be watching the Daytona 500. I don't get to watch much TV at all, to be honest, unless it's But one thing, my wife's from Nebraska. I'm from Nebraska. How I feel about Nebraska. But the one thing that I unabashedly will say that I have come to quickly embrace about the South is the weather. So no apologies for loving the Southern weather.
Yeah, I think it's 7 degrees in Lincoln right now.
It is. Yes, yeah. It is. Garth Glissman, Associate Commissioner with the SEC basketball thriving. Garth, you are the best, brother. We love you, appreciate you much. Congratulations and continued success with what you're doing. And you're so awesome, man, giving us some time this morning on a Sunday after a whirlwind moment and stage yesterday with Bama and Auburn. And what a game, what a showcase. And best to you, man. We'll get caught up again. And thank you for all you do, man.
Yeah, real quick. Thank you for joining us today and for all future appearances on the Average Joe Sports Show.
I hope you'll have me on again soon. And I mean it when I say I'm forever grateful to each of you and the Average Joe Sports Show. And I wish you all the best in this next chapter.
Garth, love you, buddy. Be good. All right. Thanks so much. There he is, Garth Glissman with us. That's awesome, man. He is the most humble dude there is. He's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was terrific and unsolicited, and will probably be used on every promo from now until the end of time. But
so it's okay.
He's a great guy, and he is so Nebraskan through and through, and was a joy to have on the show. Back in the day, and we've all loved following his career, and always. We can't be surprised at the successes that he's had.
No,
but it's still like, wow, Look at that. And then to leave the NBA to become, one of the most powerful guys in college sports right now. Greg Sankey's the boss at the SEC, but, he was handpicked to go down there and do what he's doing. And yeah, they've got great coaches in the SEC, but it takes great leadership, great organization. And as big as those personalities might be with a Bruce Pearl or a Nate Oates or whoever else is in that conference, they know where he's come from. They know that he's an Osborne guy, and they know he's got the NBA pedigree. And so when he walked into that room, whatever it was, theoretically saying or figuratively saying, they knew that they had the right guy to lead SEC basketball. And, he's done a tremendous job. And I know my friend Jimmy Dykes looks like working with him. He's a, Mr. SEC basketball on ESPN. And he's told me that he's had the respect from day one in the conference, and Nebraskans can be proud of Garth Glissman, and we're proud to have had him be a part of the Average Joe Sports Show.
That's for sure. And you nailed it. He has gone in and earned that respect, but between a personality like Coach Cal or Bruce Pearl or Oates or Jimmy that you're talking about, part of the reason, A, they're killing it. They're doing well. But B, he has taken the time to spend time with these guys and listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? What do you need? And let me get to work for you. And Garth's incredible. We're back tomorrow with the Average Joe Sports Show, 4 to 6. Going to hear us live on KFOR across the state, Central Nebraska's Superstation. And yay, can't wait for Columbus as well. So, hey, it's been awesome. Been a good couple of days, and we'll keep it rocking tomorrow at 4 with the Average Joe Sports Show.
And I do know that he was in the stream chat earlier. I don't think he still is. I mentioned the Daytona 500. Good luck to our friend and listener, NASCAR Eric.
Yes.
In the Ricky Stenhouse team today in the Daytona 500. So we'll be cheering them on from Nebraska.
Yeah, poll number 47. That's where our heart is. Bill, be good. We'll holler at you down the road shortly. Elijah, enjoy your Sunday. Chris Schmidt will talk to you next time, Monday at 4 on the Average Joe Sports Show.